everybody, welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily. I'm your host, Rebecca, and I recap live trials so you have some true crime to listen to while you're creating those masterpieces. Let me show you what I finished yesterday. This is diamond painting by the artist is Hannah Lynn, and it's called The Crazy Cat Lady. And I keep losing count of how many cats are actually in this painting. I'm told that there's 29. I didn't count 29. Close to that, but how gorgeous did that turn out? So I'm looking at it. I've got it on the wall over in this area. So I am actually, I still behind the scenes working on some crochet commissions that have been hired to do. And I got out another diamond painting that I had started last year, late last year, and didn't finish. And it has to do with the Legends of Zelda. It's a picture of Link and his horse. Now you're saying, what does that have to do with anything? Nothing. It's just that's the crafting part of the show. So today I'm going to tell you what happened on day 2 of testimony. I'm sorry, day 3. Yes, day 3 of testimony in the Rust trial. The first person on the stand was an expert in the examination of firearms and tool mark identification. So he's the the ballistics guy, so to speak, and he works for the FBI. So in this case, he examined the gun. So he saw the pistol. He said that this was a pistol that was made by an Italian company called Pieta, Pieta, and that this gun, what this company does is they make brand new guns that are replicas of older older model guns. So this needed to look like an old Western gun. So this was a new weapon, and he said when he got it, it functioned properly. So he takes it to a firing range and he fires the weapon to make sure that it is functioning properly, and it was functioning properly. And then he takes the rounds, the spent rounds that he shot, to use as comparisons to rounds that he received, or a round that he received. He received one round that went through the body of Helena Hutchins and into it was taken out of the shoulder of, and I don't remember the guy's name, the first director. So, and we know that he survived. So this bullet, he one of the things he was asked to do was look at this bullet, and through the tool marks, could he identify whether or not it came from this gun? And he said yes, he could. And he said yes, that bullet did come from that gun. Okay. Um, then he was asked, part of his examination of the weapon includes doing what he called uh, a determination to see if this gun could accidentally fire. So he does this examination. Now, he put up these really cool pictures. I learned way more about guns yesterday than I ever wanted to know, or pistols. So he says that on this gun, there's this hammer, and the hammer, you have to pull the hammer back, and it has 3 different positions. So in it, when it's in its resting position, like you haven't take your thumb to pull it back at all, when it's in the resting position, it has a firing pin, and the pin will protrude into the frame of the gun and is actually resting on the primer. So one of the things he wanted to know is, will that gun accidentally fire if you haven't cocked it, if it's in that resting position? Okay. And he says he's had guns that in the past, if you strike them or you drop them, that if it hits the hammer, the gun will go off in the resting position. Now, there's 2 other positions that will put this gun sort of in it's sort of a safety mode, but not really, because the gun can go off in those positions. So you can, when you cock it, I call it cocking it, when you pull the hammer back, there's 2 other positions that it can lock into where you're not supposed to be able to pull the trigger. So what he discovered in this gun was when the hammer is sitting at rest, in other words, that firing pin is resting up against the primer, the gun will go off. And how he tested this was he took a rubber mallet and he said, picture a box. You've got this thing, picture a box, and there's different planes in the box. He will hit it from the back, he will hit it from the front, he will hit it from the sides, he'll hit it from the bottom, he'll hit it from the top, all these different planes. And when he did take the hammer and it was sitting in that resting position, so it wasn't on one of those safety things, and it wasn't all the way down and ready to fire. When it was just at rest, that gun would go off, or could go off accidentally if you hit the hammer. Like if you dropped it and you hit the hammer, because that firing pin is sitting right up against the primer. But if it's in the position where you're ready to strike, you're ready to pull the trigger, like you've pulled it past those 2 safety positions and you've got it all the way back, it should not fire unless you pull the trigger. That's what I understood the testimony to be. If I'm wrong about guns, I'm sorry, but so the other thing he talked about, because it came out during this testimony that Alex Baldwin's version of events was that he said that he did not pull the trigger. So, which means if that gun, when he pulled that gun out and it was in the resting position, because you have to cock it all the way back and then pull the trigger for it to fire, or if it's in that resting position. So if he had it in the resting position and he pulled it out, something must have, he had to have hit the hammer of that thing some way. And because I'll show you footage of what they were actually filming that morning, because they have another witness later on in the day that actually describes what they were filming that morning. And it's Alec Baldwin sitting in this church pew, and he's hiding out in this old western town, and he's playing this character named Rust. And the lawmen are after him, and the lawmen have ridden into town on their horses, and so he's hiding in the church, sort of lying in wait, knowing that they're going to come in there after him. So he's sitting there, and his hat is down. I'll show you what was filmed there, and that was filmed that morning. So after lunch that day, they came back to do their blocking for the next scene. And the next scene was that they wanted to get a close up of the gun being pulled from the holster, but not even the gun. They just wanted to get his hand. So they didn't need the gun or the blocking. They just wanted to get a close up of his hand coming up. He had like this big coat on, Western coat, and the gun was over here underneath the coat, and he's sitting there like this, and you see him pulling the gun out. So their plan was once they had that blocked, then they were going to move the cameras to behind Alec Baldwin and then film the lawman coming towards him from the entrance to the church. Going back to this ballistics guy, he talked about examining a lot of cartridges. Now he said that they received 3 rounds that came from a cart, the armorer's cart, and 1 that came from a holster on the set. And those 4 were live rounds, and they all matched. And the 3 matched the 1 that was found in the holster. These are all live rounds. They're all the same. They came from the same place. They have the same characteristics. And all 4 of those match the 1 that came out of the victim that was removed during surgery, that was fired from this gun. So all 5 of these live rounds came from the same place. And he also examined several live rounds that came from this PDQ prop company. And those rounds did not have the same characteristics as the 5 rounds, the 5 live rounds that were on the set of Rust. Now they did show a box of ammunition, and actually it's a total of 6 rounds, because within that box of ammunition, what he did first was, because he was told these were all dummy rounds, he x-rayed them. So he separated the ones that had holes in them. He knew those were blanks. He separated the ones that had been x-rayed that had something in them, and that left 1 bullet. And when he took that apart or deconstructed it, it was a live round. The next person on the stand was a latent print examiner. So this was the fingerprint person. And usually what happens when this stuff is sent to the FBI, it will go to the fingerprint and the DNA people first. But when these bullets came through, they actually, the first request was that they go to the ballistics person. And the reason they want to do DNA and fingerprinting first is because it's less destructive than what the ballistics guy is going to do. He's going to deconstruct some of those bullets, but they get it afterwards. So they went through 2 boxes of ammunition, and the first box had 10 sets of, or 10 latent fingerprints that were found. 2 were identified out of those 10, and 1 was Alec and 1 was Anna Gutierrez. And in the second box, they didn't find any fingerprints that could come back to anybody. And they had the known fingerprints of Sarah Zachary, the person that worked for PDQ and also was the prop director, I guess. He was asked if he received anything to compare to see if any of these were Seth Kenny's, the owner of PDQ Props, fingerprints. And they said, no, we never received any of his fingerprints to compare. Interesting. So the next person on the stand was a chemical examiner with the FBI, and his job is to look at the gunpowder. I'll be honest with you, I couldn't understand a word this guy was saying. I don't know that. I think the jury probably just, like I did, completely disregarded what he said, because I didn't find anything that he said to be interesting or relevant, or I didn't get it. Then we get the DNA person on. So she tested the revolver, and the revolver also found DNA that came back to Alec Baldwin. And these weren't strong results. Like usually you get much stronger percentages. It's all done in those percentages, and his came back very, very small. But they were able to match his DNA to the revolver, but they were not able to match Hannah's DNA to any that came off this revolver, which I thought was really, really interesting. Now, she also tested for DNA of Sarah Zachary and a couple of other people, but they didn't ask her what the results were of those, if their fingerprints were on anything, which I thought was really interesting. Why didn't you ask them that? So then the next witness, this is a guy that was on the stand for the rest of the day, and it was really interesting. His function on the set was to be the Dolly Grip. So first we need to know, what the heck is a Dolly Grip? So a Dolly Grip is the person that basically they move the camera around. So it's their job to, if they need to move the camera from one position, like, from doing close up of Alec to doing, moving it to get to the back of him, that's what the Dolly Grip does. Okay. And this guy had done this for 30 years. So he had a lot of experience on a lot of different sets, a lot of different film credits. And he said he'd worked with armorers at least a dozen times in prior sets that he'd been on, but it was different on this set. He says, normally there on sets you will have you'll get a call sheet every morning, and this call sheet tells you what's going to go on for the day, and that call sheet can include safety bulletins. It might be attached to the call sheet, things you might need to know about safety for that day. It might tell you when there's going to be a safety meeting. He said on all these other sets where there was an armorer and weapons, um, that could kill somebody, we would have daily safety meetings. And it would be at those safety meetings that the armorer would come in and say, okay, today we're going to be using this weapon and it's going to fire dummies or it's going to fire blanks. Because if you fire blanks, you're going to get smoke and it's going to have that loud sound. Um, if you fire the dummies, my understanding is you get the sound, but you don't get a lot of the smoke and stuff. So but on this set of Rust, he could only recall one safety meeting, and they had been filming for 2 weeks, over 2 weeks, and he only recalls them having one safety meeting. That he was invited to. But the other thing he said was usually before the prop gun is handed to the actor, the armor, he says, they're usually very, very strict people. They are no nonsense people. They come in, they have the gun. They will, during this safety meeting, um, or it's not during the safety meeting, but before the scene, they will open the gun and they will invite the cast and crew to come over and look. Look, you can see, they'll shake, you can shake the things for them. And this guy knew exactly how to identify a dummy round and a blank round. He was very knowledgeable, and he said he was never invited to look at the weapon. That, yeah. So then he was asked about, he said he felt Hannah Gutierrez was not as serious at the job as prior armorers had been, that she would just leave firearms and gun belts loose on the armorer's cart. He said in prior uh, films that he had done, the armorer would have this fancy cart that had these locked drawers, and the drawer, like there might be a drawer that's labeled Alec Baldwin, and when you open that drawer is the gun. When you unlock the drawer, the gun that he's going to use that day is in that drawer. Um, he says, no, this this was more like a one of the gray catering carts, and it just was out there for anybody. Anybody could have done anything to those guns. They were just out there. They weren't locked away or anything. The other thing was, in his prior experience, the armorer would load the weapon in front of the cast and crew. He never saw that done here. And then the last thing he said, the armorer was always within eyesight of the gun. Also not done here on the Rust set. So then he was asked about these accidental discharges that happened on the set, and he was aware of two of the accidental discharges prior to the one where Helena Hutchins was killed. There was one where the prop master, Sarah Zachary, again, she was outside of this cabin where this Rust character was living, and this is where they were filming at the time. And she was either loading or unloading, he doesn't recall which it was, when her firearm discharged. And she looked very surprised, and so did everybody else on the set, that this had happened. Then again, a second time, he remembers what they were filming was this character Rust was inside the cabin, and it was not actually Alec Baldwin, it was his stunt double that was inside the cabin. And Hannah Gutierrez was inside the cabin talking to him about the weapon, and it went off. So he said he was very upset after this, and he reported it. He said, you need to put that into the production diary. He doesn't know if it ever went into the production diary, but so he said it was very chaotic on the set. They were running on a very, very tight schedule. And yes, the camera crew had quit the night before, a 6-member camera crew, and only 2 or 3 guys came to replace them the next day. So they were running with only 1 camera crew. He said they usually had 2 camera crews. Now they only have 1 camera crew. And they were rushing because they didn't know if they were going to finish this thing in time. They were not meeting their deadlines on filming this film. And he said Helena Hutchins had concerns about safety, and she had concerns that they weren't going to get this movie made in the time that they had allotted. So they were running, he said, with half the equipment and half the crew members that they had the day before. And he said he had no reason to believe that any of those crew members would have done any kind of sabotage that would have resulted in what occurred. He didn't, on that morning, he was one of the ones present when the shooting occurred. He said he didn't see who brought Alec Baldwin the gun. He explained that they were trying to block the set, which he said that means he was trying to find the shot that best told the story that the producer wanted to tell. And the way that they were doing it that day is that they were doing extreme close-up of him drawing the weapon. Like I said, drawing the hand. They really wanted a close-up of the hand. He said the camera was about 2 feet from Alec Baldwin. And you could see him taking the gun out of his holster. Now, he recalls that after lunch, Hannah came in. He didn't see her, but he heard her tell the first assistant director that the gun had been locked up during lunch, and she was just bringing it in now. She didn't load it while she was there. She just brought in the gun. And he recalls the director saying cold gun. So apparently when the director calls out cold gun, it means he's checked it and there's no live ammunition in that gun. Well, here's what I'd like to do. I want to show you some footage of him describing what occurred on the set. And he gets very tearful, very, very tearful.
Keep walking us through it. What happens next?
So we, I guess Reed and I are trying to find the camera angle that Joel, the director, is happy with, that he feels will tell that piece of the story. I think, like I said earlier, mentioned earlier, I believe, Helena and Serge were discussing how to change the lighting for the turnaround. Reese, my boss, Reese Price, was in there. I think he had just brought in a bounce card, maybe for that insert, maybe for the next shot.
We don't know what a bounce card is.
Lighting apparatus, so he was going to use some of the light coming through one of the windows and potentially reflect that back towards Mr. Baldwin to help illuminate him. I think Joel, the director, and Alec had some brief conversation back and forth about what the goal was for that shot, and I think Alec had drawn it once to kind of audition what he thought his action should be for Joel, and then he drew it again, and it went off, and instantly, I mean, the firearm went off in a small wooden church, so the concussion, ears ringing, that moment of panic in everybody. I think the first person I made eye contact with was Helena, who was clearly injured by whatever that gunshot was, that noise we had just heard. And in fact, she was starting to go flush, and I think holding her right side. And then I think that Joel let out some sort of scream or made some noise that, to indicate he was also injured. And I think I just my attention went to Joel because he was the closest to me. I think I recall Reed and Serge moving Pew out of the way to help Helena basically to lay Helena down and start tending to her, figure out what her injuries were, or injury. And I started attending to Joel. I think I yelled out that if you can't help us, get the fuck out of here. And someone called 911, and I do recall Mimi's voice in the distance talking to 911 and telling where we're at. And I tried to calm Joel down. We had a good rapport, so I just tried to calm him down and let him know that we were going to get through it because I didn't know what else to do in that moment. And then soon after, the medic and the best boy electric came into the church.
And I'm going to stop you real quick. The medic, do you recall her name?
Her first name was Cher. I don't recall her last name.
Okay, and who was the other person you said? Best boy?
The best boy electric, Matt Hemmer, I believe was his last name. He was Serge's second in command is what a best boy is. So the gaffer and the key grip each have a best boy, and then the rest of their department. My understanding was Matt had some combat medical training, so he came in to assist the medic, Cher, and I think
right after the gun went off, do you recall seeing Ms. Gutierrez in the church?
I do not.
And did Mr. Baldwin stay in the church?
He sat down in that same pew, I think, in that moment when I yelled out that if you can't help us, you need to, get out of here. I think he sat down, and then at some point, I looked over and he was gone. So.
Okay. And in terms of your attention to Mr. Souza, what were you doing to him? Were you touching his body? What were you doing?
I was. So Joel was wearing kind of a thick hoodie, and I believe he had a t-shirt or a couple shirts on underneath, so it was start to figure out where Joel had been injured. He was certainly at that point writhing in pain and concerned for himself, asking me how Helena was, and I think coming to the realization that he had been shot. So I was trying to find where he was wounded, so started pulling back his hoodie to reveal what appeared to be a circular wound in his right shoulder. And at that point, I think the Cher and Matt came in. They had gloved hands. I didn't, so I had some of his blood on my hands. And I think I helped them roll Joel over. One of them had trauma shears to cut his shirt off, and then I helped roll him over, and I was in a position to see that what appeared to be a bullet just under the skin, basically where his right shoulder blade was, and he was in a great deal of pain. And I think that Cher gave me some gauze to just put some pressure on the wound while they attended to Helena's injuries, which I gathered at that time were certainly much more severe because of her proximity to the firearm.
And could you hear Ms. Hutchins? I know you indicated that Mr. Souza was kind of yelling out in pain. Did you hear anything from Ms. Hutchins?
If I did, it was just, the groaning and discomfort from being shot by a firearm. I don't remember anything verbal from Elena.
So it comes out on cross-examination, and cross-examination was very heated. I thought the defense counsel was going to come to blows with the prosecutor. I thought they were going to have to step outside, take it outside. Yeah. Anyway, but the judge shut it down pretty quickly because they were like going at each other. But he brought out the fact that uh, this guy has a pending lawsuit against Alec Baldwin and the production company. But you're not suing my client, Hannah Gutierrez, are you? No. And of course, anybody would know that, she doesn't have any money. What are you going to sue her for? That's me. And he was asked, why aren't you suing Hannah Gutierrez? Because he says, I don't know. You have to ask my lawyer. But we all know it's because she didn't have no money. So he was asked, why are you suing? And he's like, because I want justice, or or something that killed my friend. So he went over this. He says he had the lawsuit in his hand, the defense attorney. He goes, aren't you asking for money for a blast injury? And he said, did you go to the doctor? And he's like, what did the doctor do or say about this blast injury? He says, I'm not gonna discuss my medical uh, condition with you or with this. I'm not gonna do it. And the judge didn't make him. I don't blame him. It's not relevant. Anyway, he admitted that his lawyer was there in the crowd, and that he had been affected by this. And then on redirect, he was asked, "Are you the only one suing Alec Baldwin?" No, I'm not the only one suing Alec Baldwin. So apparently, a lot of people that witnessed this um, are suing Alec Baldwin and the production company. And to be honest, you know, the production company should have the ultimate responsibility over the armorer. So of course, you would sue the production company. And one of the things you would allege is that negligent hiring of this armorer. Because you're not going to go after the armorer. The armorer has nothing to get. The armorer has no money. So you go after the production company, who probably has no money either, but Alec Baldwin does. Yeah. All right, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave me a thumbs up, and I will see you in tomorrow's video. Take care.